I'd like to talk a little bit about the industry benchmarks we followed API metrics. And if we move to the next slide, just a little background on who we are. We were founded in 2015 and started live monitoring APIs for developers. And we've built out a very data-driven system for looking at the end-to-end performance of APIs. And one of the things that we found was companies and developers and organizations in general tended to try and avoid talking about the end-to-end story. We actually were on a conversation yesterday with a senior site reliability engineering lead, where, as far as he was concerned, the only metrics that mattered were internal metrics. It was almost as if he was trying to pretend that there weren't end users and customers, and it's the really the intersection of developer operations, developer security, and regulatory frameworks is where API metrics really comes into its own, and where we're focusing our effort. And what we're trying to do is come up with ways that people can all use to agree on essentially what is good and what is not, and bridge that gap between the customer experience for an API and what the safety of your gateway logs or your APM stack are telling you. Because what we see time and time again is there can be quite big discrepancies, and more often than not, that the customer is often right that they're seeing something that you're not seeing in your own logs. So if you want to move on, Andrew, I'll talk about some data from a real life open banking client. So this is from the end of September, and historically they've been a pretty stable provider, but we use our own quality scoring methodology that allows us to essentially rank them out of 10. It's a bit like a net promoter score. And the idea is we want to be able to have something that is understandable to the business as well as to the operation side of things. And to echo from something that Caroline was talking about, there is a bit of a them and us attitude we perceive in a lot of organizations between the developer teams and the solutions that are being delivered. And we're trying to give everybody metrics that they understand and can rely on, so that they understand the quality of what they're providing or what they're consuming. They understand what the governance implications of their life cycle are. There's a tendency we're observing in clients to do a lot of work on the design side, but then not actually have the controls and mechanisms in place to validate that design work actually is what is being implemented. And that crosses over into the two areas of performance and security. And what we're seeing with customers is they can quickly go from being a top performer to a poor performer, with outages appearing and then disappearing and not really being tracked or understood if those outages are dependent on systems outside of their direct control. So what we're pulling up is where the performance is best, where the performance is worse, which cloud data centers, which geolocations are causing those issues, and therefore people can work out which of their customers will actually be concerned about their overall operations, even if there's nothing internally showing a problem. Can you just move on, please, Andrew? So with this provider, they had over 8 hours of outage, and depending on how you look to their numbers, their averages were actually pretty good, and they had reasonably high availability. It was up in the 94% or so. But what was pulling them down was the number of passing slow or calls that just fell outside of what was their normal expected performance parameters. And that's the kind of thing that gets left out of a lot of the thinking around traditional ops monitoring and ops tooling. And if you don't see it from inside your stack, you're just not going to, you're not going to expect it to be there. Can you move on? And what we see over and over again is you will see clusters of poor performing calls that take a very long time. The scale on the side is tens of thousands of milliseconds. So this scale shows calls that took anything from 30 seconds from, I can't see what the median on that one is, but it's probably half a second, up to 2 minutes. And they clearly had some performance issues. We were able to see that it's affected all clouds, but it's something that is affecting different data centers in different ways. and therefore different users will experience different problems with the clouds. And what we're trying to do is give people a methodology and an understanding into, it's not just about what you designed in, it's not just about what you can measure directly and feel comfortable with. Our advice on benchmarking is you have to get outside of your comfort zone, and you have to start understanding not just what you are providing, but as to follow on from Mariana's points, it's how do all of the systems that you have interplay and interlock, and what is that, as Andrew's put it at the start of this, the holistic view of quality, governance, and operations that apply across all of your APIs. And that's in a nutshell what we're starting to realize companies, the business of APIs is starting to worry about, and that's product managers, customer success teams, CIO office, CTO office, in large organizations where the business of running your business is about your APIs and the quality of your API stack, which is slightly different to how we've approached some of these IT things. And I think what this speaks to is the maturity of the industry, and the industry is somewhat growing up. And it's less about, we need an API program, we need to get it out to developers, but what are the implications of having that program, and how do we actually verify in a way that everybody agrees to? And that's where we see the benchmarking and the ability to audit what you've done and do it in a consistent and provable way to close the loop on your DevRel activities, the quality of the service that you're delivering from can developers use it, how does it work, the work that Platformable has been doing in the regulated space, through to how do we prove not just to regulators but to the third parties we work with, we're delivering a good quality of service, and what do we mean by good, and how do we actually tick the boxes that things like the security operations are working the way we expect, that the design that we designed is still what we are delivering. And that's what we're seeing, is there are still quite big gaps between providers at different levels. And just a final data point on this, we recently produced a report with the news media site Finextra and found that there's a massive difference between the neobanks, the new entrants into financial services, and the quality of service they can deliver on a consistent basis, and the traditional banks, the smaller building societies in the UK or credit unions in the US. They are suffering from both a technical debt and a skills deficit in terms of what they can deliver. But if they're not to meet the fates of some other industries, there's really something there that then they need to understand and pull up. I think we'll probably talk about that after the presentation piece. But the key thing, just to summarize, performance matters. The quality of service that you deliver is just as important as, can people use your services? Are you providing a service that meets the regulatory requirements of your industry? And do people experience your APIs consistently well from any cloud data center they might connect to it from? And can you prove that to a third party? And I think what we're pulling together is these are all essential parts of that developer journey and developer story. But I'd take it one step further and say it's a business story now. And it's not just about, APIs have grown up out of being the way that a way that can make more interesting solutions possible, into it's the way we deliver business. And in the same way, you wouldn't buy anything for your organization without doing some due diligence for understanding what it is you're buying or supplying. You can't just assume with APIs that that's a done deal. Somebody in DevOps has a graph that they can show and everybody's happy. It's beyond that now. It's like relying on your car's software to state that it's meeting emission standards and then having a very bad day at a testing center. What we'd like people to understand is you have a responsibility to keep on top of these things yourself, but also to do due diligence on the solutions that you're integrating to and consuming from. That's my point, my update.